When we first started to convert, our farm was going behind almost every year and getting more and more debt. And many of our neighbors, Hilda, the last 50 years, 75% of our neighbors are gone. They've gone broke. They sold out and told their kids, don't even think about coming back here. 75%, you can't call that success. This is not successful agriculture in America. This is an extraction program. And so we're extracting the wealth from rural America for the benefit of a few. So I think that that's really important. That's what saved our farm. It turned it into a profitable operation. In 3 years, we didn't even have to have a note from the bank for operation. We didn't have an operating note anymore, which is that all the money that most chemical farmers borrow in the spring to pay all their chemical bills, and they hope they have a crop in the fall worth enough to pay it back. And we eliminated that.
From the Weston A. Price Foundation, welcome to the Wise Traditions podcast for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. We are your source for scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom to help you achieve optimal health. And now here is our host and producer, Hilda Labrada Gore.
Hey, Hilda here. Some people say that organic, regenerative farming is impractical, expensive, and less productive than conventional methods. Our guest today begs to differ. This is episode 542, and our guest is Bob Quinn. Bob is the founder of the Quinn Institute, and he has also been farming organically and regeneratively for over 40 years. He shares today, in effect, what he calls the good news of a better way to farm and a better way to eat. His experience and expertise suggest that regenerative farming can actually be profitable, possible, and productive in countless ways. Before we get into the conversation, I want to invite you to the Wise Traditions Conference this October in Salt Lake City, Utah. Bob Quinn, our guest today, will be there, in addition to Sally Fallon Morell, Tom Cowan, Drs. Mark and Sam Bailey, the Beagleson brothers, and more. So why don't you join us too? This is definitely the conference that nourishes in every way. Go to wisetraditions.org to sign up now. I look forward to seeing you there. This is Hilda Labrada Gore, and you're listening to Wise Traditions. Welcome to Wise Traditions, Bob.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Well, I heard that you were downtown in D.C. at some roundtable with representatives, and they were talking about, is it possible to farm without artificial chemical inputs? What did you tell those folks that day?
Well, this is just last week. Actually, it was a roundtable that took place in the Capitol building, hosted by Senator Marshall from Kansas. He is the chairman of the Mohawk Senatorial Committee, and he had as his guests Secretary Kennedy and Secretary Brooke Robbins, the Secretary of Agriculture. And he had invited 10 other people, and I was one of them. There's only a couple. I was the only farmer outside of Kansas. Most of the folks there were from Kansas, and most of them were farmers or people who are working with agriculture. And they crossed the whole gamut. And what the roundtable was trying to get to is the future. What should we do in the future to make our food healthier and more nutritious? And I'm all about that. You know, we've started a regenerative organic research, education, and health institute we call the Quinn Institute, and our whole focus is healing the earth by growing food as medicine. So that's what we do. That's what I'm focusing on. So I was thrilled to get a chance to come to Washington and be at the table, at least, because most of these guys were chemical guys. Some had also helped with some organic programs. Precision agriculture, for example, that crosses all boundaries. You can do that organic or chemical, whatever you want. But there was one guy there who was a research scientist, said that he didn't believe organic could work, and so could be possible. A lot of them had in their neighborhood had large farms that were just kind of dabbling organic on the side, just a few acres out of 1,000 or something like that, or 100, I don't know.
Wow.
Anyway, a small percent. And I was able to share my story, which is that in 1988, after 2 years of experimentation, dabbling in how this regenerative organic systems even work, I gave up all my chemicals. And I thought that this is a better path to follow. So we became 100% organic at the end of 1988, and we've been that way ever since. It's getting close to 40 years.
Oh my goodness. Bob, what gave you the strength or vision to even go in that direction?
Well, I wasn't raised organic. I was raised as a chemical guy because that's all there was, and that's what we were taught when we went to school. That's what I was taught in graduate school. I came back to the farm in 1978, following in my father's footsteps. We farmed together. At that time, we had 2,400 acres for Montana. That's just average size farm. We can only grow one crop every 2 years because we only have 12 inches of annual precipitation. So we save the water from 1 year to grow the crop the next year. And we do that with summer fallow. Now they do it with chem fallow. They spray poisons like glyphosate to kill all the weeds so nothing grows for a year, and then they plant a crop for the next year. But now our farm was 2,400 acres, as I said, but it was just right for one family, but a little small for two. So I started to sell my grain directly to whole grain bakers in Southern California and started a company called Montana Flour and Grain. And there was an effort to increase the value of what we were growing. We grew high protein wheat that was great for bread. And the second year after I started in 1983, in 1984, my customer, Jim Torres from Food for Life, and they're still in business in Southern California, called me and he said, "Oh, I love your wheat." He said, "Do you think you can find some organic grain just like that?" And I said, "Oh, sure, Jim, don't worry about a thing. I'll have a load for you in 10 days or so." And hung up the phone. I thought, oh my gosh, what did I just tell this guy? Because I don't even know any organic farmers, and I didn't even believe in this stuff because I've been taught all my life that a plant couldn't tell the difference between a molecule of nitrogen coming out of a manure pile and one coming out of, compost. Ammonium sulfate, a chemical source of nitrogen. And that's what I believe. But I didn't want to let my prejudices stand in the way of giving my customers what they wanted. So I went looking for organic wheat, and there wasn't much in 1984 in Montana, but there was some. And I found some in northeast corner, about 300 miles from where we were in north central Montana. I drove my truck up, got it loaded. He signed a little document saying it was organic according to California standard. That was certification in those days. That's all there was. And I shipped it off, and Jim called and said, "Oh, this is great. I'll take another load and another." And my gosh, I was scouring the state. And what happened? I ran into a whole new group of friends, or made a whole new group of friends, and they started inviting me to their gatherings in the winter. And I've been used to going to grain growers and farm bureau meetings and stuff. And a lot of it was just, woe is me, the prices in the toilet and the government programs aren't helping us, and on and on and on. When I went to this organic meeting, there was none of that kind of talk. They talked about how they could walk over their field and feel the tilth, the softness of their field soil increasing under their feet, after a few years of organic production. They talked to me how they can control weeds with rotations and diseases and insects with rotating their crops and breaking up disease cycles and insect cycles. They talked to me how they could raise their own nitrogen with legumes as cover crops that they would then work into the soil and feed the soil, and then the soil became healthy and vibrant and it fed the plant. And so I was very intrigued. Even though I didn't believe in this stuff, I was very curious, because this was sounding like it's almost too good to be true. So I went home, and we worked up 20 acres of alfalfa. There'd been in alfalfa for 3 years. Right beside the alfalfa field, we planted our chemical winter wheat and then organic winter wheat in the worked down alfalfa in the fall. And then the next year at harvest time, both of those fields yielded almost the same. There was not more than a bushel difference. There was like 35 and 36 bushel. There's nothing, no difference really. And the protein, which is also very important for us as wheat farmers and for bread, was both in the mid 15%. And my father was astounded. I was really excited because my experiment had worked. My father couldn't believe it. He said, here this young whippersnapper son of his had come back from California, and with no expense. He's been spending tens of thousands of dollars every year on all these chemical inputs. And with none of that expense, we had equaled what he was doing, both in quantity and quality. So you always hear about, oh, the yields are terrible. The yields were not terrible. So anyway, go ahead. That's how we started.
I just want to review what you've said. It's that the organic farmers were able to see their soil thriving and have a similar yield without all of that expensive chemical input. So you were astounded, your father was astounded, and I guess that was the beginning of something beautiful.
Yes. Well, we didn't believe it, to tell the truth, at first, until we saw it ourselves. We did it on our own farm, and that made me a believer. And then the next year was a drought year, and so we had terrible crops, but we had grasshoppers. And so the chemical choice for grasshopper control is malathion. I had a spray plane come down, they sprayed the whole field. Everything was dead in a few minutes. And then within 10 days or so, the grasshoppers were back. I couldn't afford to spray it twice because it was already a poor crop. But the organic field, I asked my friends, what do you do for grasshoppers? And they said, oh, just calm down, calm down. There's a great product called Nosema locusta. It's a protozoa, a little smaller than the bacteria. You put it on wheat bran. You spread it around the edge of your field. So you have to get there early before the grasshoppers, when they're first coming in. And they eat it. And then their friends all come and eat them as they're laying there dying. And it just spreads through the whole group of grasshoppers. And I tell my friends, it's just like they eat their friends. So it's just like politics in America today, you see. And at the end, when I combined that field, it wasn't a great harvest, but there was something to harvest, and there were no grasshoppers. And meanwhile, across the creek where my chemical field was, and we didn't only sprayed it once with malathion, then the grasshoppers came again. There were more grasshoppers in the combine tank than kernels of wheat. And at the end of that year, and then also we had all of our organic fields at least had some yield. It wasn't a big yield. It was all less than 10 bushel an acre. It was terrible yield, actually, but it was something. But a lot of my chemical fields were zero. They had zero yield. And so after those 2 years, I was a believer because in those 2 years, the organic did equal or better than the chemical stuff. And that was the last year we used chemicals.
Equal or better. Wow, that is powerful to hear. The other question I have for you, as you're talking about that spray to get rid of the grasshoppers, it makes me think about a little bit about drug use. And let me explain what I mean. So I've heard that when you try a drug, often it'll give you a particular hit. In other words, a dopamine release in the brain, but that you need to get more and more supply to get that same level. And that's how people become addicted, because to stay up there, you need to have more of it. And I wonder if pesticides kind of work the same way, these artificial inputs. Do you need more and more of it because the bugs become resistant to it?
Yes, and also weeds are the same way. They can become resistant. So you need not only more, but then different, more powerful chemicals. In the case that we saw that 1 year, it wasn't a case of having more powerful, but just more. We had to spray more than once. I mean, we could have sprayed every 10 days, but that's so expensive, it would have cost more than the little grain that we had in the field to harvest would have paid for. So that's why we stopped. But the biological control kept on working because it was contagious. The grasshoppers that ate the dying ones were then infected themselves. And so it just went on spreading through the whole horde of grasshoppers, so that it was a very effective management tool.
Right. But this is the thing, Bob. This is what's confusing to me. Why would conventional farmers stick with their program, which is more expensive and producing smaller yields, then switch to organic, which is less expensive, less artificial inputs, and better yields?
Well, they're only smaller yields in drought years. So what we see to back up, to answer that part of the question, to clarify that, in average yields and average years, and at least in north central Montana for wheat, because there's all kinds of statistics for that, it's easy to talk about. We have a 9-year rotation now. We grow a lot more crops than wheat, but wheat is the most common. And I can tell you, in an average year, our organic wheat averages just about is the same as county average. So this year, for example, was a very good year. And we averaged on our winter wheat 50 bushel. That's really high. That's really good. I haven't heard what the county average is, but last year was also 50 bushel was a very good yield. And that's what our yield was last year. Average also was right at 50 yield, although we just had a few test plots. This year we had 70-acre field, so it was very significant. Because it's a good year, I'm sure there's going to be much higher yields than that by the chemical guys. But in average years, we're both about the same. They're not 50 in average years, they're maybe 35 or 40 or less. But in poor years, we're better than the chemical guys in poor years, where they're really under stress already, and then the extra chemicals just wipe the plants out. But why do they continue using them? Well, they're told on every street corner, they're told every hour they listen to the radio, they're told in every magazine, they're told in every newspaper how wonderful all these chemicals are, and they can't live without them. They're afraid. They're afraid to try because most of them are financially right against the wall, and they're afraid to try something new for fear that if it doesn't work, they're going to go broke. When actually what the chemical industrial complex has them on and their extraction model is a way for them to go broke anyway, only it takes a little longer. And many years, if you have an average year and average prices, most farmers are not able to afford the inputs that they are putting on. They're always looking for those big banner years where they're going to make, a bucket load of money with high yields. And that's what the chemical people keep pushing, that we can make high yields for you. Organic can't do that.
Right. So they're promising that and stretching the farmer's budget. And it sounds almost like a gambling addiction. Like they're just hoping this will be the year.
It is. Yeah. Farmers don't need to go to Las Vegas. I'll tell you that. They gamble at home every year that they plant a crop. That's our gamble.
Right. I understand because it's dependent on the weather and there's so many variables in the market. But how does organic kind of help farmers opt out of that system to a degree, Bob?
Completely. It's not to a degree, it's completely. They can opt out completely. I don't encourage people to do that the first year. I say, start small, take 10%, take 20%, no more than that. But in 20% conversion of your land in 5 years, you can be completely converted and you'll have enough experience that it will be not a shock. And if you have a misstep or something the first year or so, it's not the whole farm. That's how I encourage people to do. And start with crops you're already familiar with. Don't change your system and all your cropping at once. Just take one thing at a time and see how it goes. Particularly if you're in a new area, I don't try to advise people that are outside our region or the shortgrass prairie of the northern Great Plains. I don't tell them how to farm, but I tell them to find good organic, successful organic farmers in their region, in their state, in their neighborhood, and they will help you for sure. Everybody, I don't know a single organic farmer who wants to hide his light under a bushel of what he's done. They're anxious to share the good news of, a better way to farm and a better way to eat for our customers too.
Coming up, Bob shares what momentum he is seeing within the organic farming movement, as well as what he says to critics who suggest that regenerative ag doesn't produce enough food to feed the world.
You're listening to the Wise Traditions podcast from the Weston A. Price Foundation. We pause now to recognize our sponsors.
Paleo Valley. Nearly every benefit of turmeric is rooted in the fact that it is one of the most potent natural ways to encourage a healthy inflammation response in the body. It inhibits the inflammatory factor. And this is important because there are a lot of ailments rooted in or exacerbated by inflammation. Conditions like poor joint health, joint discomfort, impaired cellular health, restricted blood flow, and neurodegenerative diseases are just a few of a long list of health issues made worse by inflammation. Paleo Valley has a turmeric complex that combines turmeric with coconut oil and black pepper, which has been shown, by the way, to help turmeric absorption by 2,000%. And in their complex, they also have included organic ginger, rosemary, and cloves, which contribute to better cognitive function a healthy inflammation response in the body, and immune support and healthy digestion and better blood sugar levels. So head over to paleovalley.com/wise to receive 15% off your first order. Again, that's paleovalley.com/wise to get 15% off your first order of the turmeric complex or whatever products you see there. And Harvest Right. A freeze dryer in every home might sound crazy. Maybe. But once you see what it can do, you'll wonder how you ever lived without one. With a Harvest Right freeze dryer, you can preserve all of your favorite foods, fruits, vegetables, even full meals right at home. No more processed foods loaded with preservatives. Instead, you get fresh, wholesome meals ready whenever you need them. It's fun, it's practical, and it gives you peace of mind. Soon you'll have a pantry full of healthy, long-lasting food, so you're always prepared. Learn more at harvestright.com. That's harvestright.com. This is Hilda Labrada Gore, and you're listening to Wise Traditions. Is there momentum in this direction, would you say, Bob?
Oh, yes. It's the fastest growing segment of agriculture in America. It doesn't mean it's on fire, it's going to take over the world tomorrow. But at the current rate of growth, we're just crossing over 6% of the entire market is organic right now. And at the current rate of growth, and it's taken 35 years to get from near zero to 6%. I mean, the takeoff is always the hardest, the beginning. But now we're growing about 8% a year. And at that current rate of growth, in another 35 years, it projects to 100%. I don't know if we can wait that long, but people can speed that up if they eat more organic and buy more organic. But that's what's driving it. The customer, the homemakers, the mothers putting food on the table for their children. That's what's driving it.
That's what's driving it. And then what's causing the pushback, if that's there at all? I've heard like some arguments. Some people say if we go organic, we won't be able to have the yields we need to feed the world. What do you say to those people?
That's Monsanto's favorite line, and now it's Bayer is continuing because they bought them, So now they're owned by a foreign company, and that's their favorite line, that we are here to feed the world. I believe that we should help the world feed itself, and I'm really willing and able. And I've gone to many countries all over the world to help farmers convert to organic and to be successful in organic. And we don't need to destroy their local agriculture by sending them all the food they need to eat. We need to help them preserve and advance and increase their own agriculture. That's what we need to do. In my opinion, that's what we need to do. So that doesn't hold water for me. And again, we get back to the yield. And I repeat, in most crops, well, I shouldn't say most. I don't know most. But for us, and wheat is a very big crop in America, for export and for eating. Bread is our staple. It comes from wheat. And I can tell you that organic wheat production, average production is about the same as average chemical production is about the same as average organic production for wheat. In Rodale, where they are in Pennsylvania, where they get more rain than we do, they're showing that many years their organic exceeds their chemical production. So, I mean, you've got 2 or 3 sites now. Iowa has a long-term study comparing organic and non-organic. California does, not as long as some of them, but there's starting to be pop-ups almost all over the country, and the results are almost all the same.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And one thing that's coming to my mind right now is that people are concerned about quantity, but also about price. And so some people say if a lot of farmers go organic, it makes food too expensive for the regular consumer to afford. What do you say to folks with that question about?
Okay. I'm really, really glad you asked that question. I'm glad you brought that up because that is the other thing that they always hit us with. No one can afford this. First of all, there's not enough. Everybody's going to starve. And then those that don't starve, they can't afford to buy what there is, so they'll starve too. So that's, those are the double whammy arguments against us. And what I have seen, and you can see it for yourself, if you don't have enough money, first of all, they say, how are people going to pay for all this or expensive food? And I say, well, how do they pay for being sick? Because when they eat cheap food, that's what happens. They get sick. How do they pay for that? I would suggest that maybe the same way they pay for that be used to help them pay for food so they can avoid being sick and save billions and billions of dollars by not being sick. 60% of the entire population of this country has at least one chronic disease. We are the sickest country in the world. And so that is a question that's often omitted. You cannot talk about the price of food without talking about the cost of healthcare, because they are inseparably linked. So how do the people that have less money pay? I would suggest that they could grow some of their food themselves. That's what we do. Not everybody has access to gardens, but you can grow a little bit in your backyard, your patio, or whatever. You can buy food that's a little less processed and it's cheaper. Buy potatoes instead of frozen French fries. Buy grain instead of flour. Buy vegetables instead of frozen vegetables. I mean, fresh vegetables from the farmer's market or out of the produce stand at your local store. Buy them in season. Don't buy stuff that's come up from South America in the middle of the winter. Eat the storage vegetables at that point, carrots and cabbage and potatoes, things that can store, and things that we can eat fresh through the winter, but they aren't shipped in from across the ocean. Those are generally a little cheaper. If people could make their own casseroles and make their own dinners that they could freeze and eat throughout the whole week, they'd be saving a lot of money. The kamut that we grow, and ancient wheat that we grow, we pay farmers $21 a bushel. That's about twice and it's all organic. That's about twice the organic charge for regular wheat, but almost 4 times the cost what the farmers receive if they're selling chemical wheat that's not organic. But so how do the people? So what do they do with that? So when you get to the store, it's pretty high price. But if you take that grain home and you crack it and flake it and make hot cereal with it, 1/4 cup makes all you can eat. A 1/4 cup costs you, even at the high prices we're paying farmers and everything, 17 cents. You can feed a family of 4 a very hearty breakfast for less than 50 cents. So how does that figure? That's very cheap. You can't do that on chemical cold cereal, for example. That's very expensive. And organic cold cereal is even higher. But if you can't, so that's what I say.
I'll never forget a friend of mine years ago. She was miffed with her husband because she was like, he eats cereal every night when he's watching TV, Hilda. And she's like, it's more expensive per ounce than meat.
Yeah, I know.
He would be much better served eating something that's more nutrient rich than that cereal, that silly processed cereal.
Well, and some of it is processed to death, and some of them make for kids with all these colors and everything they shouldn't be eating at all. Thankfully we're turning a corner on that and starting to talk about additives that really harm us and should be taken out of food. So that's part of the whole process. But we can skip ahead to organic, but doesn't allow those in the first place, and have more nutrition right away.
Yes. Well, speaking of that, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about pesticides. I know this has been a hot topic lately too, because I understand that Bayer and some other pesticide companies have joined forces trying to get a certain provision passed in a appropriations bill that would give them some kind of shield of liability, so that if their pesticides cause any harm or illness to people, they can't necessarily be successfully sued. I wanted to ask you, are pesticides used on organic produce and on organic meats?
Well, not chemical pesticides. They use naturally occurring pesticides, plant materials that either repel or can make insects sick. So that's allowed. Those kinds of pesticides normally break down because they're natural products, they're not chemical products, and they're much less powerful. They're not really poison to the human systems the way the chemical ones are. That's that they should be used sparingly. Not, again, you don't want to be overusing that kind of stuff either. The healthier the plant is, the stronger the more vitality the soil has to make that plant healthier, the less you're going to need those kinds of things. Or also the other thing is, the more you grow plants in their area where they're less stressed, where they're more native. We could grow bananas in Montana, but imagine the artificial environment we would need to be successful. Well, that's an extreme case, but there's some plants growing in places that they shouldn't be growing. And so the way they get those to work is artificially prop them up. So why don't we let loose of some of that stuff, eat more regionally and locally in season of what really does best there and provides the most nutrition, and let loose of some of this stuff shipped in. I mean, it's nice for us in Montana. We don't grow our watermelon. We can grow watermelon. It gets ripe in September. So we can't have watermelon for the 4th of July unless we get it from Georgia. And I don't have a problem with that. Having a watermelon or two once in a while from across the country that has a different season we are, but that's not our main staple. People drink coffee. A lot of people drink coffee for breakfast and through the day. We don't grow coffee, but that's a extra. That's not their main staple. Look what you're eating for your main staples. Are those produced locally? Are those organic? Are those giving you the kind of nutrition you need to keep your body healthy and strong?
That's so beautiful. I don't know if you know this, but I was in Colombia, South America recently. And when I was talking to some indigenous people, especially these wisdom keepers, when I asked them, like, what's the best way to like restore harmony with nature and with one another? They were like, food, eat local. I was like, what? How are they so aware of this? But there's kind of an appreciation and a profound connection with your place in space, right? If you are aware of what's seasonal.
Right. That's very true. And I believe that implicitly. Of course, we grow something that's kind of easy to transport and easy to store. So you can ship wheat around and you don't have to worry about spoiling or shelf life or any of that kind of stuff. But you know what you have to worry about? You have to worry that it's made into white flour more than anything else. And that is that you're throwing away a third of the nutrition when you do that. And it's too bad that we got into that kind of a rut, which I call it a rut. And we're working with producing a hard white winter wheat now that's much lighter in color. Some people don't. They say, "Well, it's too dark. I don't want the kids won't eat it." Blah blah. But this white winter wheat we're growing has a little bit of a yellowish tan, and the bread comes out golden. So it's very appealing to the eye and very yummy to the tongue and your taste buds. And so those are the kinds of things we can. We don't have to be extreme, but we can massage things. We can choose crops that have more appeal, and they don't have to be foreign, from the other side of the world. They could be crops that do well in our own locale, and maybe just look at some heirlooms. Heirlooms have lots of potential. There's seed banks. USDA has seed banks all over the country with thousands and thousands of different types and lots and of seeds that you can experiment with, or you can just try some out of the catalogs, just heirloom stuff. There's all kinds of variety, and see what works best for you in your garden if you're able to grow it yourself. And if you can't grow it yourself, well, support the local farmers who are trying to do that, and support
That's
them.
Right.
And you're here to buy flavor, because you know what? Flavor is tied to nutrition. And normally the better something tastes and the nicer aroma it has, the more nutrition you're eating and serving to your family.
100%. I can't help but notice the difference when I get a tomato from the local farmer's market and compare it to the flavor or the lack of flavor in the tomato from the supermarket.
Yeah.
Who knows how long that thing has been refrigerated, transported, picked before it was ripe, and then who knows? I mean, there's so much strange stuff that goes on.
So we think there's 4 main pillars to turning food into medicine. And the first one is to start with good seed. So we're not going to be able to turn GMO seed generally into medicine. I mean, it may produce high yields and all this other stuff, but normally nutrition is not one of the things they're looking at GMOs. The second one is to plant it in healthy soil. So we're talking about regenerative organic soil that has no pesticides burden, that has a lot of vitality and nutrition already in the soil. The third, you just referred to it, is to harvest at peak nutrition. So you pick the tomatoes when they're ripe, not when they're green, so you can ship them from California to New York. You support the guys and if you live in New York, support your folks in New York and their tomatoes, what they're doing. So they're picked fresh and they're shipped very small overnight or that afternoon. They show up in your store. They're there at the farmer's market, and they're fresh. They're fresh picked at the peak of nutrition, the peak of goodness and flavor. And then the fourth thing is that minimal processing. You don't process it to death. And there's two important things to remember with processing. Don't take out what's good, okay, like we do with white flour, and don't put in what's bad, like food colorings. So if you follow those two things, don't take out what's good, don't put in what's bad, then you're going to have the same type of nutrition that left the field, that the farmer spent all this time and effort to try to produce for his end customers, but how it's processed can ruin all that or can preserve and augment that.
Wonderful. I feel like I've been at the Quinn Institute today. You've given us practical tips if we want to farm or homestead, and also as consumers, some ideas on how to make sure our food is our medicine and avoiding the healthcare/sick care system. So as we start to wrap up, I just have maybe one or two more questions. I just want to reiterate, Bob, or have you reiterate your experience after nearly 40 years of organic, regenerative farming. Your experience is that it can be profitable and productive. Is that right?
That's right. When we first started to convert, our farm was going behind almost every year and getting more and more debt. And many of our neighbors, Hilda, the last 50 years, 75% of our neighbors are gone. They've gone broke, or they discouraged, they sold out and told their kids, don't even think about coming back here. 75%, you can't call that success. This is not successful agriculture in America. This is an extraction program. And so we're extracting the wealth from rural America for the benefit of a few. So I think that's really important. That's what saved our farm. It turned it into a profitable operation. In 3 years, we didn't even have to have a note from the bank for operation. We didn't have an operating note anymore, which is all the money that most chemical farmers borrow in the spring to pay all their chemical bills, and they hope they have a crop in the fall worth enough to pay it back. And we eliminated that. So we were reducing our input costs and increasing the value of what we're selling, and the net was a profit and a profitable situation for our farm. So that was really an awakening for me, and that really pushes me. I get a chance to go all over the world and speak, and so I wrote a book about all this, so people called Grain by Grain, which people can actually read for themselves and get a lot more details than we're able to talk about here in a few minutes. But that was just a new chapter in my whole life. It was just a amazing awakening, and I think it really is the future of agriculture. It's a future that has been followed in some countries for centuries and has been very successful. And we need to get back to that. We need to get back to the future. Back to the future of food, back to the future of farming.
I love it. Back to the future for food and farming. This is beautiful. I can't wait to see you at the conference this fall. Now I'm going to wrap up, Bob, with the question I love to pose at the end of the podcast. If the listener could just do one thing to improve their health, what would you recommend that they do?
Buy organic. Buy organic. And if you can't afford the frozen pizza, buy the ingredients and make it yourself.
I love it, Bob. Thank you so much on behalf of the Weston A. Price Foundation. It has been a pleasure today.
Oh, my honor. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you in Salt Lake in the fall.
I'll see you there. Our guest today was Bob Quinn. You can visit his website, quinninstitute.org or realorganicproject.org to learn more. And I am Hilda Labrada Gore, the host and producer of this podcast on behalf of the Weston A. Price Foundation. You can find me at holistichilda.com. And for the transcript for today's episode, visit our website, westonaprice.org, and click on the podcast page. And now I'm going to invite you once again to be a member, and I'm going to tell you my personal reason for becoming one. The Weston A. Price Foundation, I hardly know where to begin, has helped me on my health journey in so many ways. They are about food, farming, and the healing arts. You've heard that before, but it really translates to supporting a regular person's choices by informing them about the dangers of some and the benefits of others. I had no idea early in my life of how important butter was, the fat-soluble activators, right? Bone broth, liver, like so many foods that have nourished people since the beginning of time, I would turn my nose up at, or I thought, well, surely country crock is better than butter. No, I was so confused. And thank you, Weston A. Price Foundation, for illuminating my mind and helping me understand that good health is rooted in wise traditions that have stood the test of time. So I'm a member because I want other people to know about this information. And every membership counts, and it's so ridiculously low. It only costs $40 for the year, $30 if you use the code POD10, and you're helping continue the Weston Price Foundation's work of education, research, and activism. Obviously, the podcast is a part of this initiative. I'm so happy that we're getting the information out in this way. But of course, their journal is fabulous, and I call it nutrient dense because it's so packed with important information that you won't find anywhere else. So become a member now. Go to westonaprice.org, click on the why become a member or why join, and I've already told you why I have. Do it, and then go ahead and comment in the reviews or write a letter to the editor and tell the foundation what they mean to you. This is our 25th year, so help us celebrate by telling us your story. You can email us at info@westonaprice.org and put letter to the editor in the subject line, or go to Apple Podcasts, leave us a bunch of stars on ratings and reviews, and tell us why you're a member. I am personally gratified to have been a member for over 10 years, certainly, because I've been doing the podcast that long. So I started back in the day, and I'm incredibly grateful for their work and happy to be a part of it. And I hope you are too. Thank you for listening, my friend. Stay well, and remember to keep your feet on the ground and your face to the sun.
On behalf of the Weston A. Price Foundation, thanks for listening. We have many free resources to support you on your health journey. Visit westonaprice.org to find podcasts, articles, videos, and more. You can also find a local chapter near you for help in finding sources of great food. We invite you to support the Foundation's mission of education, research, and activism by becoming a member. Thanks again, and take care. Wise Traditions is a project of the Weston A. Price Foundation for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. The content on this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended to substitute for the advice provided by your doctor or other healthcare professional. It is not intended to be, nor does it constitute healthcare or medical advice.